It's Monday in Tryon, North Carolina. It's been rainy, cold. Clouds have settled down over the mountain all day. So yeah, we miss Florida when it comes to days like this. Seldom have an all-day rainy, cold day in Florida. But you take the good with the bad and the bad with the good. So we're just as happy we can study and pray and spend some time in the things that God wants us to do. Why do bad things happen to good people? How many times have you heard people ask that question? And you have to go to the book of Job. There's no other place to look for answers to that question. You'll find fast answers in John 16:33, but you really need to study Job. You see, Job, number one, was a good man, found in chapter 1, verse 1. Job chapter 10, verse 3, he didn't understand. Many of us don't understand when bad things happen to us. Number 3, in Job 10:7, he thought it was unfair, and most of us think it's unfair when bad things happen to us. Number 4, his friends and his family didn't help. In chapter 2, verse 9, his wife says, "Why don't you just curse God and die?" And his friends say, "You must have brought it on yourself through your own sin." So his friends didn't really help. Number 5, he had greater losses than most of us will ever experience. In chapter 1, verse 15, he lost all of his possessions. Chapter 1, verse 19, he lost his family. Chapter 2, verse 7, he lost his health. And what else is there? He lost his material possessions, lost his family, and he lost his health. So we'll never face the kind of problems that Job faced, not all of those. Number 6, a loss of any kind brings grief. That's why we're depressed, and that's why we're discouraged when we have bad things that happen to us, because it always brings grief. Number 7, it often seems like God has left you, but we know he hasn't. But it feels that way sometimes. You'll find that in Job 23, verse 3. You'll find a factor about his grief in chapter 6, verse 14. I'll repost all of those at the end of this video so that you can look them up for yourself. Study the book of Job. But what are the things we need to remember? And then I'll answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people? First of all, you need to remember that God has control. In chapter 1, verse 12, you'll find that even Satan has to ask God's permission. Secondly, you need to remember to worship him even in difficulties. Chapter 1, verses 20 and 21. Thirdly, you need to remember that you're not to sin. Chapter 2, verse 10. Fourthly, you're to remember to trust him with all your heart. Chapter 13, verses 15 and 16. Next, you need to remember that God has the final judgment. You'll find that in chapter 42, verse 7. And you'll also find that God has the final rewards. You'll find that in chapter 42, verse 10. There are a lot of things to remember, aren't there? We need to remember that God is in control. We need to worship him regardless of our circumstances. We need to remember not to sin. We need to remember to trust him in all things. We need to remember that he has the final judgment, and he also has the final rewards. Now, why do bad things happen to good people? Because God never said they wouldn't. As a matter of fact, he uses bad circumstances that happen in the natural course of life to make us better, not bitter, to make us stronger, not weaker, to help us to have empathy and compassion for others. He promised us in his word he would work all things together for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. Why do bad things happen to good people? I don't know. But I do know that God uses them all to work in our lives. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a good day. All of those points will be summarized here in the closing.